Hey, hello, everybody, and welcome to Think, Engage, Thrive, our show on entrepreneurship, where we showcase some of the most inspiring and innovative entrepreneurs. So, if you've ever thought about starting your own business, and a lot of you have, you should watch and listen because we're going to tell you the good, the bad, and the funny stories of startups. Tonight, we're thrilled to have with us Harry Tulley, founder of Uncle Harry's brand of ice cream cakes sold in supermarkets. You may have seen him around the U.S. Harry is based in Virginia Beach. He's uh, he's been in business for decades, and we're going to hear how he got inspired to focus on his business and how he's been so successful for so long. Harry, thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. What inspired you to get started? Where'd you start? You know, your inspiration, and the big question: why did you decide to take the entrepreneurial path? Because as we all know, it's not an easy path.
It isn't. And Phil, thank you for having me on your show. I enjoy talking about entrepreneurship whenever I can. Um, my story starts with, I guess, going all the way back to my first job at 15, working in a high-end steak restaurant. I was, started as a dishwasher, worked my way up to bussing tables, eventually on the grill and in the kitchen, and then later when I was 17 and promoted to assistant, so still going to high school, and was assistant manager at this, at this steakhouse. So I had an early exposure, if you will, to, to P&Ls and, kind of, running, a little bit of running an operation.
Sure.
And when I started college, I moved to a men's clothing store. And it was in that clothing store, which was located in a shopping mall, I met the Chick-fil-A owner operator, and this
Wow.
was this was back in the this was back when Chick-fil-A's were just in shopping malls. And so, anyways, I got to know this guy, and at that point, I finished 1 year of college and decided college wasn't for me, and I was going to somehow be a entrepreneur, business owner. And so it's just looking for the right thing. And so while working full time at this clothing store, I got to know the Chick-fil-A owner there. And as just sort of as our friendship grew, he had asked me, he said, you might want to take a look at Chick-fil-A. And so so I did. And it helped that his father-in-law was the senior VP of human resources at Chick-fil-A at the time. So he made the introduction, and make a long story short, there we ended up being chosen, by Chick-fil-A to, own and operate a location, not in Virginia, but in Texas.
Wow.
Yes, my wife and I, up and moved. Our son was just turning 1 at that time, and moved out to Houston, Texas. That was sort of a new market for Chick-fil-A. At the time, and so we did that. And so Terry, being my wife, Terry, being a military brat, in the Air Force, they moved. Let's say, I think in 20 years or 22 years, they lived in 20 different places. So,
Oh,
yeah, moving was she was totally okay with it. But anyway, we grew that business with Chick-fil-A for 5 years, and sort of the interesting aspect of Chick-fil-A, although you're a sole proprietor, you really never earn equity in in the business. Which, don't get me wrong, it's a great, especially now. I mean, it's these guys, these Chick-fil-A owner operators, they do quite well. Obviously,
yeah.
as the company has grown, the brand has grown, et cetera. But still not a situation where you earn equity in it. So there we connected with a couple that owned an ice cream shop in Houston, Texas. I was still at the Chick-fil-A at that time. And so just part-time, went and talked to them about the store, actually worked part-time in their store, for a while.
Yeah.
And as they taught me the ice cream, the ice cream business, how to make ice cream. This was just a single owner, ice cream shop in a shopping center. And so made the decision shortly after that to pursue an ice cream shop back in Virginia Beach. And so we put a business plan together, raised some capital with friends and families, said goodbye to Chick-fil-A, just a great company. I still got lots of friends there. In fact, now my brother-in-law is a Chick-fil-A owner operator here in Virginia Beach. And so anyway, we still have a lot of friends with that organization. But again, wanted something we could build on our own and create equity for ourselves. So yeah, came out to Virginia Beach, and sort of our attitude was, we'll launch it in Virginia Beach where we're near family. So if it fails, we can always move back in with our folks temporarily.
Live in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of went from, from Chick-fil-A just being a concept developer and brand builder, if you will, and that's where we launched Uncle Harry's ice cream shop. We started with one ice cream store. We sold ice cream cakes, in that store, and really just for our customers. And then we grew that. We eventually grew it to 12 locations, and which is interesting because 6 of those locations were inside this one supermarket chain in Richmond, Virginia, about 2 hours away from us. But that's a different story. But we had 6 locations in supermarkets, and that we had 2 supermarket chains approach us about selling ice cream cakes in their supermarkets. And so we thought, well, it's interesting. I knew nothing about the supermarket industry. And
That's a unique industry.
it is very, very unique. So again, my background was obviously food service from the experience at Chick-fil-A, and I can't
Sure.
thank Chick-fil-A enough for just how well they educate you in that particular industry. But anyway, so we had the 2 supermarket chains were at the time about 50 stores combined. So we found a distributor. We knew that the volume would be larger than really what we could support with our internal operation we had with the ice cream shops. The way we were set up there, we more or less had a commissary that produced all the ice cream, and we distributed it to the different stores. And these were your typical ice cream dip shop. However, we were using the Italian gelato cabinets, and they were, I would call it a little bit more of an upscale ice cream shop, if you will. And
Right.
we did the mix-ins on the marble slab and all of that. So we found a manufacturer a few hours away from us that was willing to produce the ice cream cakes. He was already producing ice cream novelties and pints of ice cream. He was a small operator himself.
Right.
And so producing ice cream pies for the food service industry. So he was making a similar product, if you will. So between, he and I, we, cobbled together the operation and how he would do that. And we launched Uncle Harry's ice cream cakes in supermarkets. And that was 20 years ago
Wow.
that we did that. And so we decided, I've always believed that it's better to focus on one thing very well, than trying to focus on too many things. And so we decided to, I guess after our second year with the ice cream cakes, again, still with just those 50 stores, we concluded that we'd be better off to sell off the retail shops that we had at that time. And so actually sort of a funny story. Funny story there is one of the supermarket chains was Ukrop supermarkets in Richmond, Virginia. And the founder there, the family that owned it, Jim Ukrop, he came to me and said, yeah, maybe we could, why don't we open up one of your ice cream shops? And again, this was before the ice cream cakes in supermarkets. He said, why don't we launch an Uncle Harry's store inside one of our supermarkets? And so we did one. And then from there, within 6 months, we went into 5 additional locations. So we had 6 retail shops inside regular strip center, shopping center, and we had the 6 that were in this supermarket. And after about maybe 18 months, we realized that the supermarket locations were, of the 6, one did very well, one did okay, and the other 4 we were losing money significantly. So after about 2 years, I went to the family that owned the supermarkets. I said, okay, you sort of hand in hand, if you will. I said, look, my accountant tells me that if we continue to do this, we're going to bankrupt our business, bankrupt the ice cream shops. And so it was at that meeting that they looked at me and said, okay, look, we'll do, you just back out. No worries. We'll take them over. But we'd be interested. Have you ever thought about selling ice cream cakes in supermarkets? So really what was was sort of a negative conversation, to have with somebody. They turned it into a positive and came back and said, yeah, we'd like to bring your ice cream cakes into our supermarkets. And that's what launched us there.
Yeah, it's always great to have people who have a vision or don't necessarily think negatively about something, because in business there's obstacles that you hit all the time, and you
Yeah.
either have to figure out how to get around those obstacles to continue growing, or you give it up. But I've never seen a business that didn't have its challenges along the way, and I'm sure that they knew, the Ukrop's family. I'm sure they've seen it all over the years as they expanded that business. So to them,
Yeah.
it's not really a big negative.
Right. And I know from your prior career that you're familiar with the family and their supermarket chain, and and to this day, I mean, Jim Ukrop became a mentor because again, we knew nothing about retail supermarket business,
Yeah,
and so so again, they were very good about joining. Actually, they're today Jim is still on our board of advisors, still very active, in his mid 80s, and I count myself very fortunate to have someone like him as part of my mentor team, if you will.
sure. It's always
Yeah,
great to have mentors. Yeah.
yeah. But so then as we launched the ice cream cakes in those first two supermarkets, a number of probably 4 or 5 years went by, Phil, before we actually were able to gain business in another supermarket chain, and then let's see, I guess it was about 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. That was our first large chain out in the Midwest, and that's and there were lessons learned, certainly lessons learned along the way.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, as you know, in the supermarket industry, you have slotting. You have some retailers want you to install freezers. Fortunately, that's not that doesn't occur now. But 20 years ago, many supermarkets, well, in fact, most supermarkets sell ice cream cakes in the bakery section of the store, not over
Yeah.
in the frozen ice cream section. So, again, going back, 15 or 20 years ago, a lot of supermarkets didn't have freezers in their bakery, so they would
Yeah.
look to you, to invest, in freezers, and so we did that for another chain in the South that turned out, we bought like, I think 60 freezers, where some of their bakeries had freezers, but many did not. I think we ended up financing 60 freezers. And I remember after that first year sitting down with the accountant, and he said, so Harry, just to let you know, with the volume you're doing there, it's going to take you probably about 23 years to pay off these freezers. And he said, so I don't know how you do this, but if there's a way you could pick up all of those freezers because you own them and find a different supermarket to redeploy them, the
Yeah.
investment would be much more sound if you found a different supermarket chain. So,
Yeah.
which anyway, which we actually ended up doing. It's amazing how patient people can be, but yeah, I ended up sort of going to the category manager and just saying, hey, look, we're not doing the volume we thought we would do, et cetera, et cetera, and so we, he said okay. He said he would find room for the free, those cakes, and as we took the freezers out, and it was, but again, it was still a nightmare because once you pick up equipment like that, move it, warehouse it, and then try to redeploy it, you've damaged the compressors and and whatnot. So I think most of that ended up being a write-off a couple of years later.
Oof.
but
Uh,
yeah. So, and then we went through a period where probably for about it wasn't until 2012 that we began to really grow at a more moderate pace
yeah.
and get into more supermarket chains, because if you're a supermarket, you're, whether you're an owner or a corporate supermarket, if you're a new brand, when you come out with something, they, I mean, they live and die by what sells on the shelf. And they are, the category manager is going to be reluctant if you're a brand new brand and you don't have a proof of concept, proof of success. They don't want to be confronted with, you put your product in and then they find out later, you didn't have the financial backing to support it. And then they end up having to replace you with another brand because you've folded. But since 2014, we've been very fortunate. The Uncle Harry's brand has been the fastest growing brand of ice cream cakes in supermarkets every year since 2014, and that's Nielsen data. We're very data driven here.
Well, data driven is good. I have that conversation constantly with people. It's a bit easier, since probably 2006. I've been strictly focused on e-commerce. Prior to that, in and out of it, but since 2006, very focused on e-commerce almost exclusively. And the thing that I love about it is the amount of data that I can get. I understand how ads are performing. I understand how posts perform. I understand how, I understand who's coming to the site, how they're getting to the site, things like that. So, and we have clients in many different categories, and everybody wants to, when they have a product, they want to jump into retail right away. I want to be in Walmart. I want to be at Target. And we always explain, if which we know from being on the buying side in the supermarket, if you have a Me Too product, you have a product you're trying to displace an incumbent, it's going to be much more costly. But when we did skincare with Carol Alt, we did a beauty brand, 2006 through 2013, which we sold to Johnson & Johnson. We built it on the shopping channels, e-commerce, and on Amazon. So we built the brand outside of retail, and then Ulta Beauty came calling, and Sephora came calling, and all these retailers came calling. And at that point, we were in the driver's seat to say, we'll put the product in, but we don't pay slotting, we don't pay rebates, discounts, accruals. We can't do it. I don't employ accountants. I can't do it. And so all of our agreements were written like that. So I try and explain that to people, that it's, the thing about e-commerce today, which is probably difficult for ice cream cakes, but the thing about e-commerce is you can build your brand and get it to be a pull strategy where you built it big enough that you're not a risk. People want you, and you don't have to play those accounting games.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And what's interesting, what's going on in the supermarket industry, today. So our daughter Heather, who's a director of sales for Uncle Harry's. Heather and our son-in-law Brian, they live in Tampa. So there's not a single brick and mortar Kroger store in Tampa.
Yeah.
Yet they have Kroger delivered to their house, every week. For I think they pay $60 a year for, and that's for same day delivery. And but it's a strategy that Kroger launched, I think, about 18 months ago, where they opened 3 warehouses throughout Florida, and it allows them to reach the broader, larger markets in Florida without a single brick and mortar store.
Yeah.
And so it's an exciting industry to be a part of, the supermarket industry, because as you've said, online sales have changed everything. And of course, what was you saw announced not that long ago, where Kroger was acquiring Albertson Safeway, or maybe I think that's vice versa. But at any rate, I was told that part of the strategy behind that is to create their own a competitor to Google, Amazon, if you will, where you have that many supermarkets. It gives you a sort of a scaling, that allows you to compete with the likes of Amazon. But it's COVID has changed everything for good. I mean, I think in many cases it's been good for a lot of different businesses.
Yeah, I think COVID definitely changed behavior for years and years. And I can remember going back to 2000 in the early days of e-commerce and listening to people say, supermarket's going to be dead and we're going to be doing all online shopping, et cetera, et cetera. And it really came down to consumer behavior, and it took a long time to change. I can remember that I think the number was like 12 to 14% of online of food sales were happening online up until COVID. And when COVID hit, obviously everybody started buying online, and that was a paradigm shift for the consumer. Certainly Amazon has a leg up because of the app. When so many people have the app on their phone, I think 92% of consumers who purchase have the app on their phone, and that's good. That's always a tough hurdle. Walmart always says we're going to go after Amazon. Target says we're going to go after Amazon, but at the end of the day, Amazon has the consumer locked in with that app. So until somebody figures out how to really circumvent the app with the consumer, it's always going to be a tough strategy. Not to say you can't do business. There's a lot of retailers out there doing very good business online, but Amazon certainly has a leg up over everybody.
Yeah, and there are certain products out there that, as you said, ice cream cakes, just they don't. They don't. Very difficult. To get those from from point A to a home. I should say this: it's not difficult. It's very expensive.
Yeah,
and it's no different than Ben and Jerry's. The other ice cream brands. You can order that online, and many of them use the same fulfillment company that that we know of. But it's just, at the end of the day, we looked at it and said, there's not that many people ordering ice cream cakes, online. So I think there'll always be certain items that you'll, go to the store in person to purchase it and, bring it home until we figure out a way how you can ship ice cream cakes, not on dry ice and not overnight, because that's what makes it so expensive.
Well, I think that's the other piece where Amazon has a bit of a leg up on almost everybody because of the ability to handle their own delivery in their own trucks and deliver same day, because that enables you to have a little bit more flexibility with perishables, whether it's frozen or fresh. But it's not everywhere, right? They can't handle 52. They're not handling 52 states in every single city within those, or 50 states when all the cities within those states. It's virtually impossible. But the major cities, they pretty much have locked up. So, which is still a big business. So I think that if somebody can replicate that, because shipping right now is the number one killer in e-commerce. It's the number one killer because shipping costs continue to rise and fuel costs are a part of it. And even Amazon is saying, we'll give you a discount if you pick up your order at a designated location. Right? They've implemented that. So every single one of our e-commerce stores, our e-commerce clients, everybody is screaming about shipping and analyzing it. But it's necessary.
And we won't. Maybe in a few minutes we can talk about the whole supply chain challenges that that started I guess 3 years ago with COVID, and we still live in that world of not. I mean, we have 2 production facilities, and now we'll be adding a third next year. We don't own them; we contract that out, and so we have production partners that produce our products for us. But it's there's certain ingredients you never know. You have you've got production all scheduled for the entire week, and then one ingredient doesn't get delivered when it's supposed to, and that ingredient can be in every product, and then it's it's a fire drill trying to change everything around, reschedule production. They'll produce another vendor's product out instead of ours, and then it's been an interesting 2 or 3 years.
And no question about it. We had one of our bigger clients is one of the bigger razor companies, and they actually multinational, multi-billion-dollar company, and couldn't get the steel during from 2020 to 2021, couldn't get enough steel to make the razors, because that all comes from pretty much everybody uses Swedish steel. It anneals to a very thin to a thin rate so that you can get a great shave. But it
Okay.
was, I just couldn't believe it. I was amazed because I'm thinking, here's this multi-billion-dollar company. You would think that they could start calling people and just have the stuff, but they're stuck just like, some of the smaller companies we have who are in
Yeah.
the same position where they couldn't get a certain ingredient or they couldn't get a certain package. Packaging was a major problem during, I
Hmm.
think it took almost 18 months to get packaging sorted out, whether it was PET or whether it was cardboard. I mean, so it's challenging. It has been a challenging couple of years. And I think people have learned, to sort of adapt, but at the same time, costs have gone up.
Oh, on the packaging, Phil. So our retail packaging provider, they went from a typical lead time of 3 weeks, and then it escalated up to about like maybe 6 weeks, which you could live with, and literally overnight, it went to 12 weeks, and with no notice,
Yeah.
and so you're caught, scrambling, trying to get, trying to get packaging, and what they told us was the reason for it was their largest customers were ordering 6 months worth of product,
Yeah.
and so that was tying up the production, the production time, and which pushes all of their smaller clients, like ourselves, pushes them back,
Yeah.
and it was, yeah, it was crazy. Which so then when it opened up some, and we had the ability, well, when we were ordering it, you have, I mean, Eric Donaldson, our CFO, was, he managed as something he manages, and he came to me and said, he says, Harry, I don't know what else to do other than for this next order, we should order maybe 6 months worth of product
Yeah.
to make sure we have it, right? And of course, I don't have to tell you, when you've got 13 different items and they all have a different box, and you're ordering, all of a sudden I mean, just the cash it takes to inventory, that much product. But the alternative was to, order maybe 3 months worth, but then, you go to order again in another month or two, and the lead time may have gone out further.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a trying time. Fortunately, it has started to, to settle down, but you still get the occasional issue here with an ingredient, or maybe a package that, you're not able to get with the lead time that you're typically accustomed to. But anyway, over the years, I've had people come to me and say, "Hey, I've got this great product. I think it would do well in supermarkets. And how do you recommend I go about this? And who would I talk to? Could you make an introduction for me?" And I said, "Okay." I said, first, you need to sit down and write, come up with a business plan and determine how much capital it's gonna take you to. You've got to develop the packaging, and all that's got to be in place, and master case, and a promotional plan. And I said, I mean, all of a sudden it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to, launch, launch something, a new item like that. And that's before you get into slotting and everything else. So I mean, I can tell you, and again, ice cream cakes are sold in bakery, but on the frozen side, in the ice cream section, and I know this because of an affiliation with a non-dairy ice cream brand we helped launch just three years ago. And so to get a pint ice cream product to market, and get it through the losses, for the first 5 years, you're at 8 to 10 million, and
Investment.
investment. Yeah, it's because and again, ice cream cakes are sold in bakery, but over in the ice cream section, it's so competitive
Oh,
that
sure.
you're spending 35% in marketing,
Oh,
just
yeah.
in trade spend. Yeah, and that doesn't include, demos, having sampling events, or an experiential event with your social media team. So that's another cost that's layered on top of that as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
We mentor a lot of people who come up with products and they want to go jump right into retail, and we always caution them because we say you have to engineer your product to fit into that environment.
Yeah.
what works on e-commerce or what works in, a small environment or a small store doesn't necessarily work in a Costco or a Walmart. And we're going through it with a company that's a client now that's been in business for 30 years, and they just got, everybody's jumping up and down because they got a purchase order from one of the big retailers. Now that they start to analyze it, what it's going to cost them, and they go, oh my God, and we've got to engineer some costs out of this. I
Yeah.
explained that to you. Yeah.
Uh, you know, I let's see. You said something. Let's say I had a funny story related to that. Oh shoot, what was it? Well, and anyway, you look at when you look at those costs. I mean, it is I mean, it's mind-boggling just how
Oh,
expensive it is, and when you go to raise capital, to back a new company like that, that's, as you said, that is actually, we were talking about this, earlier before we got on, but just a time investment of raising capital, I mean, first with friends and family, and then from there, maybe family offices or maybe eventually private equity groups. But that is I mean, you could dedicate somebody full time just to stay on top of the raising capital. But to your point, it's easier to start, online if that's an option, and start very small. Yeah.
yeah. We were talking a couple of weeks ago. I had one person on, and they were talking about how, because I mentor at the University of Maryland School of Entrepreneurship, and these young guys, I think that the press, and I think that some of the bigger um, startups have sort of altered how people think about business, and they come up with these plans, and these young guys think, well, I've got this great business plan, I'm going to go in front of all these investors and I'll be able to raise the money, and you're trying to say, no, that's not going to work, number one. And number two, don't think that way. Think about getting your minimum viable product out there, think about refining it, and then think about making a profitable business. Because the person that was on, Brian, was talking about how he thinks that people view raising capital as a badge of honor, that I raised $10 million or $15 million from this private equity firm. And what they don't realize is that the business that they had, that they ideated, the business that they started, now doesn't really belong to them anymore, because they really didn't read the Series A notes on what that money cost you, because that's
Yeah.
expensive money. And so, we always try and preach, think about your business, minimum viable startup, and then a minimum viable product, get it out there and try and build a profitable business before you start worrying about raising capital, because you might find alternative financing options out there.
Exactly. And one of the things too that as we develop new products, it's easier once you get in with just a few products. And then I immediately wanted to go, well, let's get in other supermarkets. And and again, one of our advisors, it explained to me, and again, this was when I was much younger, said, no, it's always easier to sell more products in your current customers where you're currently selling than it is, that's a better return on your investment of time and resources versus trying to spread yourself out.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that person was right. So we focused on, the Eastern Seaboard first, and then started to move to the Midwest, and then now, Uncle Harry's is sold in, I think, we're in 43 states now.
Wow.
And so we're about I think it's about a little over 6,000, total stores. So we've been very fortunate. But anyway, learned a lot along the way though, and continue to learn.
Did you have any near-death experiences in that time?
Let's see. COVID.
Yeah. I think everybody can point to that.
Yeah, we did have a point. Let's see. So I forget the year. We had a point where we got into one. So before we got into that one fairly large supermarket chain in the Midwest, we were, had folks investing behind the brand and our business plan, et cetera. And then, one of the, key members of our investment team at the time, sat me down and he said, Harry, I think this is the last check we're going to write.
Oh,
because it's like it's nothing against you. You have literally willed the business to this point. And so, and we sincerely appreciate everything you've done. I mean, we would back you on a number of other things, but this is just not. We're not sure that this is the right thing. And sometimes you have to separate your emotion, from the brand. And so it was literally a few weeks after that we got accepted at this supermarket chain that really lifted our revenue, and so that was a near death experience. And then we had another one fairly recently in 2018. We had done for a I don't want to say this because I don't want to put any name. Anyway, just large club store that we were doing a private label ice cream cake for them. So it wasn't Uncle Harry's branded. We were producing it, but it was under their brand. And for 5 years, it was great business.
right.
But it reached the point where it was about right at half our business. And with a few months' notice, they informed us that they had decided, and again, a new category manager came in, and who we didn't have a relationship with,
Right.
and he was making the decisions at that point, and decided that private label ice cream cakes is not where they need to be. They're going to bring in a different brand, not our brand,
Right.
and that hurt. I mean, when you take a 50, essentially a 50% hit on your revenue.
Yeah.
And it's and we, it took us, several years to, climb, to climb out of that. And so that was, so that was another, sort of an almost, near death, experience. And then as we're climbing out of that, COVID came along.
Yeah.
So we've been very fortunate the last couple of, the last 3 to 4 years. We've had some really significant growth, and we're, very fortunate for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. COVID, even we understood all the product companies having problems, but even for us as an agency, it was devastating because the trickle down effect, the product companies couldn't get product they could sell. They didn't need us to be marketing or doing advertising or running their Amazon stores because they couldn't sell anything. And so
Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
we got very, very damaged. The other thing, we had a lot of international clients, and South Korea and Italy and Israel, and all of a sudden that whole piece dried up because of various effects, both political and COVID driven. So it became, for us, it was almost, that was our near death experience, and it was a scary point in time.
When we first went from retail to selling in supermarkets, I remember the first time that we got a complaint from a consumer that their cake was freezer burned, and I know it didn't go out of the plant that way.
Right.
And so we went. I remember I was going to be in that market, the following week, so I went to that specific store within the chain and looked, and they had their freezers. The freezer wasn't set cold enough. So the product was melting a little bit and then refreezing, and I went to the category manager, explained what was going on, and so they said, okay, we'll get maintenance over there, take a look at that that freezer and take care of it. Of course, that's fine when you're in several hundred stores, but then when you're in as many locations as we are, you can't control the selling environment. That was my biggest sort of. I had the hardest time embracing that idea that when we had our retail shops, we controlled the selling environment. So we controlled, how clean it was, how, the quality of the product, everything, all the way through the process. But when you're selling to another store to sell your products, you don't control that selling.
No control. Yeah, I understand. You have no control over that.
No. And so it's ultimately it can can injure your brand because the consumer assumes that it's the fault of the product, not the not the retailer. So anyway, another lesson lesson learned, and so you create you sort of create a strategy or a program to again, now when we go into a new retailer, I say now, for the last 12 years. we have a memo go out to let them know, make sure your freezers are at the right, temperature setting for ice cream products.
Yeah.
And so our product doesn't melt when it gets delivered to the locations.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it's a challenging environment. It's very, it was very aggressive to take on that channel. I'll tell you,
Uh,
you know?
it's yeah, and you learn, as category managers or buyers, if you will, you develop a relationship with them. We use, as you know, and people that don't know the industry probably don't know this, but we use a network of brokers that to assist with our not only selling in, but with managing the brand within the individual supermarket chains, and so. But you could have a change in a category manager, as I mentioned, that our one customer that we were doing a significant amount of business with, and a new person comes in and is managing that desk, and they decided, well, I like this brand better, even though your performance is you're doing this, but I want to bring a different brand in,
Yeah.
and so. But anyway, but by and large, Uncle Harry's, there's several ice cream cake brands in supermarkets today, and they, competition is good. It forces you to always look for better ways to do what you're doing, not just for us, but I'm sure for our competitors as well. So in most cases, we live on the shelf, if you will, with the other brands there, and then we've had occasions where we've outperformed the other brands, and have dedicated the entire space to Uncle Harry's. But yeah, so it's again, being an entrepreneur, a business owner, you're constantly adjusting to to what's going on around you.
Yeah. I like what you said before about, we decided to focus on doing one thing and doing it well, because you had the stores, and then obviously you gave up the stores and focused on strictly retail, because I guess it would have been, I can imagine it would have been too difficult to do both.
Yeah, every so often, I will joke with my wife Terry, and I'll say, you know what? I said, it'd be fun to open up just one ice cream shop, and we can run that. And here's her comeback is always, Harry, none of those cakes have ever called in sick. And so,
She's
and
100% right.
I should have launched when we started our conversation. This is how I should have started. So the name Uncle Harry's, it's actually, I'm not the Uncle Harry.
Right.
So yeah, my Uncle Harry, who I was named after, he was a fireman, fire captain. And he and my aunt were never able to have children. And so they were growing up, they were my godparents, and they lived 2 doors away. So I could go there and get all the attention I wanted, not have to, when I was a kid, and not have to compete with my siblings. And so so I was I mean, they literally raised me. I was there. I lived with them more than I lived at home, which was just 2 houses away. And then later, so the home we have now, we built it to move Uncle Harry in with us when he got to a point in life where he needed to, needed a little assistance and help. And so that's there's a little story about my uncle on the printed on the cake box about explains that background, the story. And our deal was, he said, you can use my name provided I get all the chocolate ice cream I can eat. So that was an incredible deal for us at the time,
Yeah.
when we opened that first ice cream shop. Yeah.
I like that, though. I think it humanizes the brand. It takes it from, as people see brands in stores and they immediately think they're big corporate entities. They don't realize that some of these brands that they're talking about are really just people that are behind it, and people that are working hard to do it. It's not all, these multinational, huge, conglomerates, especially, and unfortunately, retail has gotten so big and so competitive that it is very difficult for young brands to get in there economically and make
It is.
even though they may have great products. It's very difficult to do.
It is. And there's, when you, again, depending upon your product category, but for the most part, you pay to get on the shelf.
Absolutely.
And that's, called slotting. And you can, it can be a significant number.
Oh,
And yeah, and there's no guarantees. There's no, there's no contract. I had over the years, I've had people, ask, so Harry, how does this work when you go into a supermarket? Is there a contract? Will they'll keep your product on the shelf for 5 years? Or I said, no, they can throw you out in 6 months if they want, to.
yeah, exactly.
And when we launch a new supermarket chain with our product, we put, we put a significant amount of funding behind the brand and promote it to make sure it launches well. And then we continue to promote, throughout the year and subsequent years as well. That's one of our differentiating factors between, Harry's brand and the other brands of ice cream cakes out there, is we still, promote the brand. And we have a reputation for growing that ice cream cake category for the supermarket, chain. And so in this industry, it's it's paramount that you have a concern of, or focus on what's best for that category manager. You want to grow their category, for them. And
Yeah.
obviously promotions are one way to, do that. But it's, you can make that significant investment and do some heavy promoting the first 6 months. And if, a year later, they can come to you and say, well, we've decided we're going in a different direction. And so fortunately we've been very fortunate that hasn't been the case for the last, 5 or 6 years. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's tough when it happens.
yeah. I see people like you referenced. I see them. They create a product and I'll see a new brand when I'm shopping in the supermarket. I'll see a new brand that's put in freezers for, like an ice cream sandwich product, and they have, freezers at all the checkout lanes, and I just shake my head and think to myself, wow, I learned that lesson years ago, that providing equipment, especially expensive equipment like, chest freezers, that's not a business model that usually works out well.
No, you don't want to be in the equipment business. You want to be
No.
in the product business that you're selling. There's no sense in, because that's two different businesses, equipment leasing and putting it in stores and then maintaining it. And, it's broken. How do I fix it? It's not, it takes away from, it detracts your focus from what you're really trying to do, which is build a brand in the ice cream category.
Correct. And and I remember when we installed those 60 freezers in that one supermarket chain, and then, they all worked fine for the first, year, 14 months or so. And then you start having them, break down, and then and someone said, yeah, those freezers have to be maintained. You got to have them serviced and have the coils cleaned, et cetera. And we said, oh my gosh, really? And then we talked to a company to come in and do that, contract it. And we, obviously we didn't factor that cost into the overall business plan for that, for that supermarket. And if people think installing the equipment, that's the expensive part, it's maintaining it. And but like I said, we haven't provided freezers in quite a few years now for that, for that reason. We don't want to be in the equipment business.
No.
So, do you find with I know I'm assuming with your marketing agency, you work with a lot of millennials, and do you find when you talk about large companies and big brands, what do you find is among the millennial population, and how they look at some of these very large brands, corporate large companies backing these brands?
Yeah,
versus the smaller brands.
I think that consumers, let's say under the age of 35, let's say under 40, between 18 and 40, are really looking for uniqueness and what's the word I'm looking for? Authenticness. They want to know that what you're saying and how you're handling your product is true, right?
Yeah.
And that you're not just throwing marketing terms out there to get them to buy. And I think, what I do credit Amazon with is Amazon enables small businesses in certain categories to be able to get their product out there on the biggest shopping platform, in the world, right?
Mhm.
So you can see a lot of young brands out there that have been able to, figure out a way to do it, right? From mattresses, I mean, I've seen mattress companies explode from being on Amazon, to home textile businesses, to food, to
Mhm.
fashion. And so, but the one common denominator that I see more and more of them, and have for the past probably 20 years, is people want authentic. People want to know. They don't care how big or small your company is, but they want to know that you're authentic in what you're saying,
Mhm.
that be who you are, and be honest about it. I think they are skeptical of larger brands, in the fact that so many larger brands have been caught not being 100% honest about what they're doing, whether
Mm.
it's saying, I'm organic, then you come to find out they're not organic, or I'm, non-GMO, and you find out that they're not. So I think when you start making statements, branding statements and marketing statements, you want to be able to back it up and let them know that they're authentic. The other thing is the rise in having a face to a brand,
Yep.
not just, not just a brand, but a face to a brand. And I'm the person who founded the company. I'm the person responsible, and this is my company, type thing. And you've seen it with, I think that we've seen it in skincare and beauty products. We've seen it in fashion. We've seen it in all kinds of categories, even food. And so I think that those two things have become important, not just to the millennials, but I think to that whole group, people between
Mhm.
the ages of 18 to 40, you know.
And a provider that can really help communicate that message. And this is it's interesting. When Facebook first came out, my friends will tell you that after about 6 months, I looked at them and said, "There's got to be a way to leverage this platform for business,"
Yeah.
and 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 so obviously, they did. But to launch a new brand today, and to have a brand, if you don't have a marketing group supporting your social media properties and your social media story and your brand and interacting. I know when we tried to do it in house,
Yeah.
years ago,
Very
and
difficult.
then and then finally, I guess maybe 5 years ago, we handed that off to someone that knew what they're doing, knew how to build out the strategy and report. And I would say this to others as well, if they're new and launching a product, in or any whether it's online or in supermarkets, that make sure you have a trusted provider on your digital and social media marketing, because they can make or break you, and they become the face. So if a consumer has a question on one of your social media properties about your product, they're getting an answer, a timely answer back, from someone there who has a vested interest in your brand. Or again, as you know, a marketing agency is an advocate for your brand.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
not just there. I mean, you need to have somebody that you trust with running your ads, and you've got to have somebody you trust with running your Amazon store, and, all these
Mhm.
different pieces, because they all have to work together. The whole e-commerce flywheel, whether you're selling in retail or selling online completely, you still have to manage that entire flywheel. Your emailing platforms going out, and your messaging, and it all has to flow together. And I think sometimes companies get different providers for different things, and none of them are talking together, and they have different strategies, and it becomes a jumbled mess. But you know
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's amazing. So you have any thoughts, anything that you would say to a young entrepreneur who said to you, Harry, I want to go into the ice cream cake business game?
Don't do it. Don't do it. No. Um,
Any business,
wow.
anybody comes to you.
Yeah, no, it's if when I look back, and of course, obviously, experience is always 2020.
Right.
Um, and I have to, the founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, when he was asked in an interview, they asked, so what do you attribute your success to? And he said, making good decisions.
Yeah.
And then they asked, he said, okay, well, were you able to make those good decisions? And he said, through experience. And then he said, well, how did you acquire the experience to make those good decisions? His answer was bad decisions. And so it all comes full circle. So obviously, when you look back, hindsight 2020 is always through 2020 lenses, right? I wished I would have maybe broaden my scope or team of advisors. Because when I was in my 20s and had the retail shops, I thought I knew everything, like many, many 20-year-olds do. And then we start to get smarter, as we move through our 30s. But I would encourage someone to have have a team of trusted individuals that you trust enough that you will listen to their advice, who've been down the road, have whatever your area of your product or whatever it is, your service that you want to go out and launch. Someone who has related experiences to help you, and sometimes it might cost you a little bit of equity,
Yeah.
to get that advice, but it's you can't put a price on that kind of experience and guidance and help. So as you look for individuals, but potentially to maybe invest behind your idea or your project, is be strategic with either the individuals can also help you beyond just the investment,
Yeah.
or add to that, equity for individuals that can bring you that knowledge base and experience and guidance to help you along the way. So I would say that should be the first thing you do, and those folks will help you build your business plan out, and they have a vested interest to see you succeed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's a good point. We do that because we do some small investing, and we only do it with companies that are small enough that we think we can help them grow, using the expertise we have in house, and obviously our personal expertise. And, we put a little capital into it, but mostly it's services that we think we can help you grow. We can do your marketing and things like that. So
Sure.
we've done that
Yeah.
to help people out. Well, Harry,
Yeah.
I love having you on, but we're out of time. I know we could
Oh
talk
my gosh.
for days about
Yeah.
business, but
and no commercial break. I know what's
I
going
have to
on
do
here.
it now.
Okay.
I'm down to 2 minutes.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to have a conversation, and I look forward to getting together at some point here in the near future.
Thanks, Harry.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is Araya McGarry. I'm the host of Get Celebritized with Araya McGarry, right here Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Limelight Network, right here on E360 TV.
Hey, thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you got a lot out of listening to Harry's story. It's an amazing story when you think about it, because that's a category that none of us really think about. Everybody thinks about, I'm sure, food and packaged goods, and and the normal categories. But to go into something as difficult as ice cream cakes and be successful at it for over 2 decades is fantastic. So one last thing, don't forget to go onto my website. I've got a free startup planning guide. So if you go to philmasiello.com, you can download that free startup planning guide. It's great for you young guys just starting out. It helps you think through what you're trying to do. Thanks again for stopping by, and we'll see you next week. And we've got a great one coming up in July, and I'll tell you more about it at a later date. But thanks again for tuning in.